Hello there. We're going to talk about how to meet accessibility guidelines. WCAG 2.1 is the current guideline for accessibility. So if you follow WCAG 2.1, you will meet the accessibility requirements. I understand they are working on 3.0. You know, as technology changes, implementation has to change. The World Wide Web Consortium, W3C, is the main international standards organization for the Internet. It should be noted that the implementation is not an all-inclusive list of issues facing web users with disabilities. However, they are internationally recognized and adopted standards. As I studied this, my recommendation is that you go to the checklist I will give you and then search each one on Google as you try to comply. If you design or are in charge of a website, such as a business owner, believe me, you want to comply. Currently, there are 61 million adults in the United States who live with a disability. 26%, 1 in 4 of adults in the United States have some type of disability. In 2017, there were 814 website accessibility lawsuits filed in federal and state courts. These two pieces of data alone should convince us of the importance of designing for accessibility. There is also a strong business case for accessibility, just saying. Studies show that accessibility websites have better search results, they reach a bigger audience, they're SEO friendly, have faster download times, they encourage good coding practices, and they always have better usability. Have you ever even tried to read the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines? I don't know about you, but my eyes somehow glazed over. So I went on a search to find someone who spoke in a way I could understand. I found many websites, including YouTube, where you can get answers. I will include some of them at the end of this briefing on the slides, which you can get from the San Antonio Web Spinners website. I also found that the more I studied and learned, even the W3 website started to become clear to me. WCAG 2.0 was designed around principle, not technology. Remember I told you all the information in the previous WCAGs are included in the current 2.1? The principles of WCAG 2.0 are perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. The acronym is POUR. Think of it as a poor website. Just kidding. Perceivable is about the senses people use when browsing the web. Sight, sound, and touch. All these need assistive technology to browse your website. The principle of a website, being operable, is about the different ways people take when browsing the web. Some of them may have motor difficulties, which means they use their keyboard to navigate, and some users who have sight impairments often prefer to use a keyboard rather than a mouse too. The main issues for making your website operable are ensuring good keyboard-only navigation, avoiding setting time limits for your users, and helping them out if they make errors on forms. They recommend that all navigation should be assessed through the keyboard. To understand what's on your website, you must use clear terms, have simple instructions, and explain complex issues. You must also make your website function in a way that your users understand. by avoiding unusual, unexpected, or inconsistent functions. A robust website is one that third-party technology like web browsers and screen readers can rely on. Your website must meet recognized standards such as using clean HTML and CSS. This minimizes the risk of your users relying on technology that cannot correctly process your website. WCAG is organized into 3 levels of compliance. Level A, the most basic web accessibility features. Level AA deals with the biggest and most common barriers for disabled users. Screen readers, screen magnifiers, and speech recognition tools. Level AAA is the highest and most complex level of web accessibility. The idea is to obtain the level you can, as some guidelines can't be applied to all websites. A suggestion is to try for AA and AAA. Level AA is the standard of many governments, as this level targets the most common and most problematic issues for web users. I've included Level A, AA, and AAA checklists, which will be on the San Antonio Web Spinners website. Luke McGrath has lots of information on his website and a book and course for a fee if you want. You may want to take advantage of this. These are his checklists. There are also checklists on the W3C website. I'm going to show you several ways to comply in the next few slides. These are by no means all-inclusive. 1.3.4 guideline is orientation, AA. Your website should adapt to portrait and landscape views without losing meaning or function. Responsive web design is the name of the game, and we know that. That is, everything looks good on any device or screen size and functions correctly. The 1.4.10 guideline is reflow. It says that elements must be responsive without scrolling. It goes into more detail, telling us that vertical scrolling content must be at a width equivalent to 320 pixels. Horizontal scrolling content must be at a height equivalent to 256 pixels. Users must be able to zoom in up to 400% on desktop browsers. The intent of this one is to support people with low vision who need to enlarge text and read it in a single column. When the browser zoom is used to scale content to 400%, it reflows, that is, it is presented in one column so that scrolling in more than one direction is not necessary. Have you tried going to Chrome and enlarging it to 400%? It looks amazing. It is really nice. It looks really good. The 1.4.12 guideline is about text spacing. Users must be able to increase text properties without losing content or functionality. For instance, line height, line spacing, is at least 1.5 times the font size. Space below paragraphs are at least 2 times the font size. Letter spacing, tracking, is at least 0.12 times the font size. And word spacing is at least 0.16 times the font size. The 1.3.5 guideline is to identify input purpose. We should help browsers automatically fill out our forms. They also recommend you put the name of the field above the form field, and you can also put it to the left of the form field. However, they say that screen readers read it better when it is on top of the form field. Guideline 2.5.3 is label in the name. Visible labels need to match accessible names. Looking at both examples, in the better example, The accessible name that a screen reader user hears is by the item name for so much amount, and the software can activate the correct button. Guideline 1.1.1 is the non-text content guideline. Alt text is a tenet of accessible web design. It's also known as alt attributes and alt descriptions. So it's HTML code to describe appearance and function of an image on a page. Its purpose is to describe images to visitors unable to see them. This includes users who are sight impaired or otherwise unable to visually identify an image. If an image is not loaded for some reason, the alt text will be displayed. For SEO, include alt text with your images to ensure all users, regardless of visual ability, can appreciate the content on your site. Also, if you don't have alt images, you miss out on ranking, and you miss the opportunity to include your target keywords. Optimal alt text format is sufficiently descriptive, but doesn't contain any spammy attempts at keyword stuffing. The first one is okay. It just says it's pancakes. The next one is good. Stack of blueberry pancakes with powdered sugar. That better describes the product. But not recommended is keyword stuffing. We used to do this because you wanted every conceivable keyword that would bring up your website in Google. For instance, pancake, pancakes, pancake, hotcakes, etc., etc. Anyway, don't do that. So how do I write good alt text? Describe the image as specifically as possible. Keep it short. Recommendation is 125 characters. Use your keywords if possible, but no keyword stuffing. Don't use images in place of words. Search engines can't read text within your images. If you do, use alt text to explain what it says. Recommend you don't include image of, picture of, etc. Redundant. There are some more about alt text. Don't neglect form buttons. Give an alt attribute such as submit, sign up, apply now. There is content that does not need an explanation. Decorative content that has no meaning. Content that is used solely for visual formatting. Content that's invisible to all users. In this case, use this coding. Notice everything is there, including the quotation marks, but there is nothing between the quotations. This is good for screen readers as they won't pick it up. For video and audio, add a short description of the media, but ideally provide a transcript. Color contrast is an often overlooked web accessibility problem. People who have low vision could find it difficult to read text from a background color if it has low contrast. The 1.4.3 guideline is contrast ratio between text and background. It should be at least 4.5 to 1 ratio. This is for users with low vision and color deficiencies. The ratio becomes more forgiving with larger and heavier fonts, since they're easier to read at lower contrast. If your type is at least 18 points or 14-point bold, the minimum contrast ratio drops to 3 to 1. Text that is part of a logo or brand name has no minimum contrast requirement. Text that is decorative and conveys no information is excluded. When you communicate something important, showing an action or prompting a response, don't use color as the only visual cue. People with low visual acuity or color blindness will have a hard time understanding what you want or are trying to tell them. For instance, spell out the difference between blocks, which make it colorblind friendly. I wanted to show you the checklists so you would know what I am talking about. Here's Luke McGrath's checklist level A. It gives you a place to put the project date, website, and web page. You notice that the first column is the guideline and the second column is the description. It also gives you a notes column and a pass or fail column. This is level AA. It's the same format, but just the appropriate level guidelines. So now we have AAA checklist. The same as the other, just using the appropriate level guidelines. This kind of gives you an idea of what you'll be looking at and how it can really help you figure out what in the world you're going to do with your website. These are just a few websites and other useful information I came across when studying for this briefing. I hope I have defined accessibility well enough so you know where to go to get more information when you are implementing accessibility on your website or when you manage. Penn State has a really neat website. It's got lots of information on it. Easy to read, easy to use. Web accessibility for developers is what I was talking about earlier. It has the checklist by Luke McGrath. He also has a lot of other stuff on his website that you will want to check out. Now, how to meet WCAG by W3C is good, and it has some good checklists, but they're more detailed than Luke McGrath's. Chrome extensions are really great developer tools. There's several programs that talk about your accessibility. You can use it directly on your website. You bring up a website and go to the drop down, pull up one of these accessibility checkers and try it. Now you'll notice that the first one, Axe Coconut Web Accessibility, has 5,000 plus users. The next one has 7,000 plus users. And Accessibility Insights for Web has 40,000 plus users. And my first choice would probably go to that, but go ahead and try all of them and see which one you like. Now, contrast checker is important to ensure WCAG's contrast and color accessibility. This tool will calculate the score for both regular and larger text sizes in different conformance levels. You can change the color values and see the results in real time. Now, Macs have an advantage. They have a contrast app. And with their tool, you can check instantly the contrast using a color picker. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation as much as I enjoyed preparing for it. There is so much information in WCAG accessibility that it cannot be done in a short brief. It is something that you will have to do on your own because everyone's websites are different and the requirements therefore are different. There are courses you can take, like on Luke McGrath's website, to give you an in-depth knowledge of the requirements. If you're not a webmaster, you might want to consider making the big bucks by checking others' websites to see where they can comply or don't comply and what they can do to fix it. In the meantime, this presentation and the checklist will be on the San Antonio Web Spinners website. Thank you for joining us.